presence, and we will start by listening to some verses of the Quran with Brother Hassan Qasir. On va tout de suite commencer notre événement par quelques versets coraniques. خير ما نبتدئ نشاطنا فيه آيات من ذكر الحكيم يتلوها على ما سمعنا الأخ القارئ حسان قصير مسبوقة بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد.
أفلح من رفع صوته بالصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. هذا بيان للناس وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. ولا تهنوا ولا تحزنوا وأنتم الأعلون إن كنتم مؤمنين. إن يمسسكم قرح فقد مس القوم قرح مثله وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وتلك الأيام نداولها بين الناس وليعلم الله الذين آمنوا ويتخذ منكم شهداء. والله لا يحب الظالمين. وليمحص الله الذين آمنوا ويمحق الكافرين. أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يعلم الله الذين جاهدوا منكم ويعلم الصابرين. ولقد كنتم تمنون الموت من قبل أن تلقوه فقد رأيتموه وأنتم تنظرون. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إذا جاء نصر الله والفتح ورأيت الناس يدخلون في دين الله أفواجا فسبح بحمد ربك واستغفره إنه كان توابا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.
صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. They say, I dream of surviving and for everyone to be safe. I dream of passing high school and getting into university. I dream of becoming a doctor to help people. I dream of becoming a journalist. These are just some of the dreams of the children you are seeing on the screen. These are the children of Gaza. That was once painted in shades of orange and olive trees and scented with the salt of the sea. Most of these faces are now gone. In just 36 days, over 11,000 people have been killed by the Israeli military in Gaza, under which over 4,000 were children. And many Palestinians' lives remain unaccounted for, with bodies still under the rubble. They bombed hospitals, schools, civilians' homes, and even United Nations facilities. No journalist, or medical staff, or even civilians are now safe in Gaza. We are seeing right now what we once read in history books about genocide. When we ask about these brutal attacks, we are told Israeli forces are fighting human animals or even inhuman animals, cockroaches, and savage, terms used by the Israeli officials to describe Palestinians. We hear no condemnation of the barbaric slurs and inhuman behaviors, but rather a call for more violence and an evident demonstration of racism and support for ethnic cleansing. Nous sommes là à rêver d'un monde où nos enfants se réveilleront au doux chant des oiseaux, entourés de leur famille. Mais au lieu de cela, nos enfants ne peuvent pas dormir à cause du bruit assourdissant des bombes, se retrouvant orphelins en un instant. Dans quel monde sommes-nous arrivés où le meurtre d'une population entière n'entraîne aucune conséquence? Nous sommes aujourd'hui leur voix, nous sommes leur espoir pour mettre fin à ce cauchemar qui dure depuis 1948. Ils ont été abandonnés par le monde entier et nous n'avons que nous-mêmes pour sauver ce monde d'un autre génocide. Regardez autour de vous, contemplez la diversité qui nous entoure maintenant, ici même, et vous verrez la beauté que mes yeux perçoivent en ce moment. La cause palestinienne nous rassemble pour promouvoir la justice et l'humanité. Maintenant, nous sommes tout simplement des êtres humains unis pour empêcher un autre génocide à l'époque moderne. Quand nous avons dit plus jamais, nous l'avons dit pour tous. Nous ne voulons pas revivre un autre holocauste. Que devons-nous faire pour que notre voix soit entendue, pour qu'on puisse finalement appeler pour un cessez-le-feu? We have quickly realized we live in a world where publicly speaking up for our rights and opposing the extermination of our own people has consequences. So what will become of all of this? They try to make us fear of speaking up by threatening us to lose our job, lose our social platforms, our opportunities in school. But you know what? You know what I have to say about that? I say no to silence. I say no to fear. I say no to injustice. We will continue to stand up for Palestine, against Islamophobia, and against anti-Semitism, and against any form of injustice. So you may ask, what is next? What can I do? As Imam Ali said, you presume you are a small entity, but within you is involved the entire universe. Et comme on le dit, l'union fait la force. Alors nous choisirons de lutter pour la justice et pour nos droits, de nous élever pour les opprimés et d'être la voix des sans-voix. Ces moments définissent non seulement qui nous sommes, mais aussi le monde pour lequel nous vivons. Alors de quel côté de l'histoire vous positionnez-vous? Quelle sera votre histoire à vous? Ils ont dit que les enfants oublieraient, mais ils n'avaient pas prévu que nous serions la génération qui ne saurait oublier et nous nous souviendrons de ceux qui ont gardé le silence en ces moments. L'histoire se souviendra de ces personnes en tant que traîtres, complices de crimes de guerre et de génocide. Notre plume ne cessera d'écrire sur votre hypocrisie et votre silence face à ces atrocités. I'm sorry that the world has let you down, Gaza. Pardonnez-nous de ne pas pouvoir vous arracher à cet enfer sur terre. Pardonnez-nous de devoir vous voir mourir sous nos yeux, impuissants à empêcher votre destin. Je demanderai présentement une minute de silence en mémoire de nos martyrs en Palestine. I would ask for a minute of silence in memory of our martyrs in Palestine. نرجو الآن من الجميع دقيقة صمت عن أرواح شهدائنا في قطاع غزة. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد. Avant de débuter avec les discours de nos invités, que je remercie pour leur présence aujourd'hui, j'aimerais pouvoir remercier aussi les élus et les ex-élus québécois de diverses branches politiques qui ont démontré leur courage et leur humanité en demandant avec conviction un cessez-le-feu à travers une lettre ouverte. Parmi eux, on retrouve le conseiller municipal du district de Montréal-Nord, Abdelhak Sari. Je pense qu'il est présent. Non. Ben, il sera présent sous peu avec nous. Donc, c'était une petite mention pour remercier ces personnes-là qui ont pu démontrer publiquement leur courage. Par la suite, on va pouvoir commencer avec notre très cher événement d'aujourd'hui. Et on va commencer avec nul autre que Maître Jean Philpot. Maître Philpot est un avocat criminaliste de grande expérience. Il est membre du barreau du Québec depuis décembre 1984. Il pratique le droit pénal à Montréal depuis 1984 aussi, ainsi que le droit pénal international depuis 1998. Il fut connu à travers plusieurs dossiers mettant en pratique les droits de la personne, entre autres. Maître Philpot a déjà témoigné à titre d'expert, d'où pourquoi il a pu organiser plusieurs missions à travers le monde et colloques dans le domaine du droit international. Il agit aussi comme consultant auprès de plusieurs organismes. Donc, sans plus tarder, je vous invite à accueillir avec moi Maître Jean Philpot.
Je suis très inspiré par Mme Hariri avec son discours. C'est difficile à suivre, mais je pense qu'il y a plusieurs choses à souligner qui ne sont pas simplement juridiques. La solidarité mondiale, comme aujourd'hui au Carré de Mignon, comme à Londres, comme à Istanbul, comme en Téhéran, à travers le monde, au Brésil, la solidarité et les gens n'ont pas peur. C'est un éveil et vous verrez, ils n'ont pas de cheveux gris beaucoup. C'est une autre génération et ça nous inspire. Alors, je vais, dans 15 minutes, on ne peut pas développer des thèmes à fond. Le 7 octobre, que vous soyez d'accord ou non avec exactement comment ça s'est passé, on ne sait pas comment ça s'est passé, on entend beaucoup d'histoires comment ça s'est passé, on ne sait pas. Mais le mythe de la supériorité israélienne de son armée a été détruit, à mon avis, à jamais, parce qu'il dormait. OK? Alors, et ça s'applique beaucoup aux armées de l'Occident. Le modèle à lequel on pense, c'est on appelle ça en anglais settler states, des États de colons, comme Algérie, de 1830 à 1962, le Kenya, Zimbabwe, l'Afrique du Sud. Et dans ces États coloniaux, avec une grosse population, les colons se pensent propriétaires de tout. Ils veulent faire disparaître tout. Et c'est un peu constant partout. Et nous sommes confrontés avec cette situation-là, mais l'histoire nous montre que ça ne dure pas. Est-ce que j'ai raison de dire que c'est le seul qui reste? Je vais faire attention parce qu'il y a peut-être une exception, mais c'est presque... Oui, OK, le Canada, les États-Unis, ça reste encore. C'est des États de colons, mais c'est... OK. Alors, l'Algérie, c'est pas loin de Gaza. Et il y a un écrivain, les gens avec les cheveux gris ici, connaissent peut-être le nom de Frantz Fanon, un psychiatre de Martinique qui a fait la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, qui est allé travailler en Algérie et faisait partie du FLN. Et en 1960, il y avait la leucémie. Il a écrit un livre qui s'appelle Les damnés de la terre. La traduction en anglais, The Wretched of the Earth, mais c'est écrit en français. Je l'ai lu en 1969 parce que j'étais étudiant. Et cela explique comment la violence est inévitable dans la colonisation. On aime ça. Moi, je ne suis pas violent. J'ai peur. Moi, je suis pour eux. Mais cette violence est inévitable. Il ne faut pas être gêné par ça. Et il faut comprendre historiquement. Le peuple a le droit de prendre les armes. Vous allez suivre des cours de droit international. Étudier les résolutions des Nations Unies. Un peuple colonisé a le droit de prendre les armes. Et le contraire de ça, le colonie occupant, le pays qui occupe, n'a pas le droit de se défendre. Alors Israël n'a pas le droit de se défendre. C'est des choses fondamentales. Et la Russie l'a dit au Conseil de sécurité il y a 2 semaines environ. Donc, ça, c'est des choses qu'on dit. Israel has a right to defend itself. On entend ça partout. Ça n'existe pas. Il ne faut pas accepter ce discours. De quoi on a besoin maintenant? Une solution politique. Je pense, from the river to the sea, probablement, moi je ne suis pas là pour dire comment faire parce que je suis Canadien, mais il faut une solution politique. On va peut-être rappeler un petit peu les crimes en se rappelant que les États-Unis, même s'ils disent « Oh, il y a trop de civils tués », je pense que c'est 347 avions pleins d'armes qui sont allés en Israël depuis le début, depuis le 7. Moi, j'ai le chiffre 347. Peut-être c'est... OK. Des porte-avions au large. Je parlerai des porte-avions tantôt, mais quels sont les crimes? Les Palestiniens sont des animaux, les humains animaux. Les civils palestiniens sont tous responsables. C'est le discours dominant de ceux qui bombardent, qui attaquent les enfants, et les hommes aussi en passant, enfants, femmes, hôpitaux, Nations Unies. La punition collective est illégale. Moi, j'ai grandi, je suis né en 1946, on connaît le terme « never again ». On nous a enseigné ça à l'école. Voilà. Ça se répète, ce que les nazis ont fait. Et qui c'était? Justin Trudeau. M. Legault. Évidemment, Biden, les Allemands de l'Allemagne, les Britanniques. En fait, c'est l'axe occidental. La communauté internationale, si vous voyez la carte, là, c'est l'Amérique du Nord, Australie, Japon, Singapour, je pense, l'Europe. Ça, c'est ce qu'on appelle la communauté internationale. Les autres, ils se taisent. Le reste du monde ne se tait pas. Ils savent. Et le mot génocide, moi j'hésite à utiliser ce mot-là en tant que juriste, mais il y a une tentative d'éliminer ou détruire une partie de cette population. Et ça, le terme s'applique. Ça ne s'applique pas en Ukraine. Ça ne marche pas en Ukraine. Mais ça s'applique ici. Il y a des changements. Et c'est ça, il ne faut pas oublier. Le changement maintenant, c'est qu'il y a des pays qui sont capables de tenir tête aux Américains. Et je ne dirais pas tous parce que c'est... Mais il y a évidemment la Chine et la Russie qui sont capables... Les États-Unis ne peuvent pas les attaquer. Ils ne peuvent pas. D'autres pays qui sont très forts, Brésil, Iran. Moi, je ne vais pas faire l'analyse géopolitique dans quelques minutes. Mais nous avons besoin, évidemment, d'un cessez-le-feu et pas une pause humanitaire. Une pause humanitaire veut dire arrêtez un peu, nourrissez-vous là, puis on va vous tirer. C'est pas acceptable. C'est la justification de mort, de tuerie. Alors, Canada est responsable. Justin Trudeau, j'ai vu quelque chose la semaine passée. Il baragounait, il n'était pas capable. Il faillit dire cesser le feu, ceasefire, je pense, il parlait anglais, puis il a dit pause humanitaire. Justin Trudeau, nous allons devoir faire des choses. Un exemple, moi je ne sais pas si le PYM est intéressé, mais le 7 décembre, 55 rue Saint-Jacques, Mélanie Joly va faire un levée de fonds pour le Parti libéral du Canada. On verra qu'est-ce qui se passe. Moi, je ne suis pas dans les chambres décisionnelles. Je vais faire quelques commentaires qui montrent la faiblesse de ceux qui intimident. Les porte-avions américains, on appelle ça les floating bathtubs. Parce que les missiles qui sont dans les avions MiG sur la mer Noire peuvent les couler d'un coup. Alors, c'est vraiment une balance de pouvoir et c'est une occasion pour le changement. Nous sommes dans une situation extrêmement importante en droit international et en relations internationales parce que l'OTAN, NATO, l'OTAN, L'' OTAN, formé en 1949, est faible. Ils sont sur le point de casser. Ils ont perdu leur guerre en Afghanistan. En Afghanistan, ils ont perdu, mais en Ukraine, ils ont perdu. Ils ont tenté de détruire la Russie. La Russie monte. Qui descend? L'Allemagne, la France, l'Angleterre. C'est vraiment une défaite économique. Alors, et mon collègue ici, et je suis d'accord avec lui, quand la guerre va s'arrêter, et ça va s'arrêter, M. Netanyahu n'aura plus de pied, il n'y aura plus d'appui. Alors, nous devons être optimistes. Nous devons critiquer le Canada, qui d'ailleurs c'est un pays de colonisateurs, pas les francophones. Les francophones n'ont pas fait la même chose. Les Français n'ont pas fait le même settler state comme ils ont fait dans l'Ouest canadien. Mais oui, il faut attaquer le Canada. Et il y a beaucoup de pièges médiatiques. Peut-être on va entendre parler aujourd'hui. La question de Hamas. Il fallait dénoncer Hamas avant de parler de Palestine. Non, c'est pas vrai. Le Cour pénal international, j'ai des réservations importantes sur... J'ai pratiqué comme avocat à la Cour pénal international. J'étais là l'année passée pour 3-4 jours. De donner à la Cour de faire une enquête, ça va prendre 3 ans. Et on attend. Non. Il faut régler la question politique, militaire maintenant. Et pour ces raisons, en dépit de l'horreur vécue au Gaza, la population mondiale, les peuples de Gaza, les peuples palestiniens, soit et en Palestine et dans la diaspora, ont beaucoup de raisons d'être optimistes. Connaissez-vous l'expression coq à l'âne? J'ai écouté le discours de M. Nasrallah hier. Puis il y a beaucoup de fronts. Il y a la guerre partout. Yémen, Cisjordanie. Moi, je ne rentre pas là-dedans maintenant, mais ce n'est pas juste à Gaza. La bataille se fait partout. Et la bataille légitime de résistance, ce n'est pas illégal, c'est légitime, devra mener aux négociations pour une solution politique qui va durer. Merci beaucoup.
On va pouvoir passer donc à notre deuxième invité, with Rabbi David Feldman. Rabbi David Feldman is a spokesman for Neteru Karta International, an organization founded in the 1930s in Jerusalem to protect the Jewish community from the new Zionist movement. Over the past few decades, this organization has been actively publicizing the voice of many Jewish communities around the world against the Zionist ideology. The Zionist state and its crimes committed against the Palestinian people, and they explain to the world the distinction between Judaism and Zionism, because there is a really big difference between the two terms. That the relatively new Zionist movement is a rebellion against God, and that it does not represent the Holy Torah, nor the entire Jewish community. Rabbi Feldman and his colleagues appear on many occasions at public demonstrations, university lectures, and pro-Palestinian conferences, as well as frequently giving television and radio interviews. They often fly to countries around the world, including many Arab countries. They meet with political and religious leaders and have been very successful in building bridges between the Jewish and Arab communities. Among their numerous trips, Rabbi Feldman and his colleagues have visited the besieged Gaza Strip multiple times, where they have delivered truckloads of medical aid, including an ambulance purchased with donation that they had collected. They were warmly received there, as in all other Arab countries. So I have the honor and the privilege to welcome Rabbi David Feldman on the stage.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. With the name of the Almighty, may we do and succeed. As the verse in Psalms 121 says, my help is from Almighty God, the creator of heaven and earth. While we are standing here during this terrible time, when this sad, criminal genocide is taking place in Gaza, so many innocent men, women, and children are being killed in a mass murder. This is something that disturbs, pains every human being, regardless whether it is our close relatives. In any case, they are our relatives in humanity. We all have families, we have kids, we have grandchildren, and we want our family to be safe. And we cannot imagine having members of our family facing threat, danger, and murder. And as a Jewish rabbi, as a Jewish person, I say, it troubles us even way worse, because sadly all of this is being done supposedly in our name. And on top of this, tragically, our religion, the Jewish religion, is being misused to justify all these crimes. There is so much to speak about the falsehood of the Zionist movement, which is basically built on falsehood. But I'll concentrate on what I can help the public more than others. And I will try to explain how the Jewish religion is being misused in a terrible way and in an unjust way, unjust to God and unjust to humanity. When they show to people one side of the coin, they don't show the other side of the coin, even if some of their claims might have some truth to it, it is truly falsehood if they misrepresent the religion and the religious concepts. And let me start with one point. It's very famously being used in Zionist propaganda, the concept of the promised land. God have promised the Holy Land for the Jewish people. Now, if that's true, then don't you dare to fight God. They try to present this image as all Jews support the Zionist movement, the State of Israel. If that's the case, don't you dare to criticize. If you criticize, then you're anti-Semitic. But we have to know better than that. Yes, the promised land, the concept of the promised land is a true concept, but they only show you one side of the coin. God have promised the Holy Land for the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, according to Judaism, and this promise was fulfilled. The Jewish people were brought into the Holy Land. We believe that we were brought into the Holy Land by miracles, by the hand of God, not by our might. But the other side of the coin is very, very basics of Judaism, which unfortunately in a large scale has been forgotten today. The other side of the coin is, there are twice a verse in the Torah which says, the land should not reject you because you defile it. If people will not remain in the level of holiness God requires of them, they will be exiled from the land, expelled from the land. Unfortunately, it was several hundred years later. God have warned the Jewish people through the prophets, and these are in the books of the prophets, dozens and dozens of verses speaking about this. Unless you repent, you would be exiled from the land. Unfortunately, this is what happened. The Holy Temple, the Jewish temple, was destroyed, and the Jewish people were driven into exile. Now, all Jews, throughout all generations, without any exception, accepted the Jewish exile as a divine decree from God, and that we are required to accept it and forbidden to fight it by any physical means. We are forbidden to enter exile by any physical means. We are forbidden to return to the Holy Land in mass immigration in large numbers. Individual people are allowed, but in mass immigration it's forbidden. And we are forbidden to fight any nation. This is very, very basics of Judaism, again, accepted by all Jews throughout all generations, until the beginning of Zionism, which is almost 150 years ago, which is relatively recent, because we're talking about a 3,000 years religion, and then we have a new Zionist philosophy, a new Zionist movement over 100 years old. This philosophy was founded by non-religious people, Theodor Herzl and his friends, people who are not only not observant of Judaism, but they were outspoken heretics, hated God and hated his religion. And these people, and only these people, could have come up with a philosophy which is so contrary to basics of Jewish belief. Now we can understand how far away, how contradictory these two concepts are. Judaism is a religion only. It's about the belief in God and the practice of His commandments. While we have a Zionist movement, which is a purely political movement, dropping the entire religion. God forbid you no longer have to follow God in order to be Jewish. You just have to support the national movement of Zionism. And this is a true tragedy to our religion. While the Jewish people are in exile, according to our religion, we are required to live in peace with our neighbors, be loyal citizens in the countries where we reside, and as I said, forbidden to fight any nation. This is how Jewish people lived for all generations. In many cases it was difficult, exile was difficult. In some cases it wasn't that bad. It happens to be that the Muslim countries, and in particular Palestine, were excellent in respecting our religion and protecting our people. How? How can Jews and Muslims live together? Nobody will believe this. But the fact of the matter was that we both believe in one God, our religions are close, and we respected each other, and we protected each other. And this is how Jewish people lived in a beautiful peace, especially in Palestine. This is basics of Judaism. Even before we see any crimes, even before any offense on other people. This concept of Jewish nationalism is totally not only forbidden, it's a total contrast of basics of Jewish belief. But when this happened in Palestine, not just by accident some crimes took place, but this was the intention of overtaking the power over the indigenous population. Unfortunately, so many people were expelled, killed, stolen their land, and so much catastrophe, and a true Nakba, which is unfortunately going on for so long. Now this is just adding so much more crimes on this criminal anti-Jewish movement to begin with. And we always say, all these crimes taking place in Palestine is not only a violation of international law, this is a true violation of Jewish law. And in no way should be these two confused together. The state of Israel in no way represents the Jewish religion and does not represent the Jewish people. Yes, you do have some people from Jewish descent who decided to create a state of Israel, to form a movement of Zionism, but in no way do they represent all Jews. Now, but Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, insists that you call the state of Israel the Jewish state. Why? Why not the state of Israel? Why not the Zionist state? They do want you to call it the Jewish state, as we started in the beginning. That if this is a Jewish state, then it's representing the Jewish people. And if you criticize it, you criticize the Jews. Then you're anti-Semitic, something that nobody wants to do. And nobody should. But it's our duty to clarify the issues. It's me as a Jewish person, and it's others in whichever community you are. We have to clarify the issues because we cannot afford the silence. We cannot afford the Zionist movement to get away with all they are doing. And people should be silenced and not speak up. People are suffering, as we see today especially. The Jewish religion is being desecrated. God's name is being unfortunately misused to all what is taking place. As human beings, as religious people, as serious human beings, we cannot allow this. It's important to realize that it's not only that Zionism and Judaism is so diametrically opposed to each other. It happens to be that masses of Jewish people worldwide oppose the movement of Zionism, oppose the state of Israel, and oppose all criminal actions they are taking all these decades, especially now. So many people are intimidated, and really, truly intimidated, as I'm sure in the Muslim community, whoever is an immigrant is certainly fearful of speaking up. But even if not, everyone is scared to speak up. In the Jewish community, the same happens. So many people will lose their jobs in the last couple of weeks since October 7th, 2 of our members in our organization lost 2 prestigious jobs because of this massive intimidation. People need to imagine, if we see people out there, if I was today here on the streets, this massive rally for Gaza, if we see thousands of people on the street, and these are the people coming out in public, we can imagine how many more are behind them who don't come out in public. The same happens in the Jewish community. When we see Jewish people coming out, we have to calculate how many more Jewish people are out there who share this view and who are so upset with all what's taking place. We have huge communities. I personally am from New York. My colleagues are here from Montreal. We have in Montreal communities. If you very carefully try to look, you would see nice big communities with many synagogues, many institutions with no Israeli flag, no mention anything about Israel. Those people are not Zionists. They will not come out in public, but they are not Zionists, and they don't support the state of Israel. And communities like these are in many parts of the world. It happens to be that in Jerusalem, in Al-Quds, in occupied Palestine, there's a very strong anti-Zionist community, publicly active in their condemnation of the state of Israel. What happened to them? I mentioned it today in the rally. It was maybe 3 weeks ago. And you can imagine, after all this tension, after October 7th, after the state of Israel decided that whoever mentions anything about Palestine is officially criminal. If you mention anything in your social media page about Palestine, you're officially a criminal. And those people came out on the streets of Jerusalem with a Palestinian flag to express their solidarity. What happened to those people? They were harassed, badly harassed. Their synagogue was vandalized. Scholars were dragged out in the middle of their studies, out on the street, and arrested. And this happens all the time. And finally, let me add one more important point, which unfortunately just works for the Zionist movement to silence people, is the concept of fear. Everybody is scared. You know, the mainstream media, the Zionist propaganda manages to place fear into the hearts of everyone. Like the Jew is afraid of the Palestinian. You know, the Palestinian would like to kill us all and to drive us into the sea. And then the Palestinian or the Muslim is afraid of the Jew because the Jew is that mass killer and is that Nazi. Unfortunately, that's the image that we see all the time. But we have to overcome this. It's my duty as a Jewish person. I bring back stories to my communities to explain to them that I visited the Muslim center and nobody killed me. I attended a pro-Palestinian rally. Nobody said a bad word. As was mentioned before in the introduction, I visited Gaza. And I was safe. And this was after 2009, after the beginning of the siege. After that, those people were, in addition to all occupation, were even way more oppressed. And we were safe. And this is something that people need to learn and people need to see. And the same the other way around. I suggest you have to bring this message to others. We had a rabbi speaking. We had righteous people. We met them. We meet so many other people. And the Jewish people need to hear this from the Muslim community. We don't hate you. We were friends for so long. And we have to remember old history. We have to use the old history to teach us all how it's supposed to look like. This beautiful peace that did take place in Palestine should be for us a lesson. This should show us how the past was, how the future can look like, how it's supposed to look like, and how it will look like if we truly understand what's going on. If we truly want to have a better future, we have to address the root cause of all what is happening. People would think that it's because the difference of religion we have to fight. And this is what Zionist propaganda wants us all to believe. Because if there's a difference of religion and if those two religions will never change, and if that's the cause for the problem, then there's no solution other than fighting. continue in fighting, and continue again, killing people from all sides, and God forbid God's creation shouldn't be destroyed. And therefore, we have to understand that not the difference of religion is the problem. Despite all differences of religion, we lived in peace. Because as peoples, we can live in peace. It is the political movement of Zionism, which in the very first place came in with the agenda of oppressing another people. And unfortunately, I say this as a Jewish person, not because I condone any violence, but there's nothing else to expect, sadly, tragically, from this approach of oppressing another people. This has to stop. Certainly we have to have a ceasefire. Desperately we need a ceasefire for those oppressed people who are in dire danger every second as we speak now. We need a ceasefire, but a ceasefire is way not enough. We need a total freedom. We need a total end to this entire occupation. And at that time we can hope to see once again that beautiful peace that did exist before. And I have to conclude, we have to, all of us, in addition to all what we do, all what we speak up for Palestine, we have to pray to Almighty God for all those affected people, all those people in danger, all those souls, human beings that lost their lives, little kids, little babies. We have to pray for the peace of everything, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our third speaker is Dr. Mitchell Hartman. We can all make a difference, BDS on campus and community and beyond. Dr. Mitchell Hartman is a professor at the Institute of Islamic Studies at McGill University in Montreal, where she has taught for over 20 years. She also translates fiction from Arabic into English by Arab women writers, including recently publishing the prison memoirs of Lebanese activist Nawal Baidoun in Arabic and English. And the forthcoming novel, Asma al-Atawni, Long's Walk from Gaza. She has been involved also in organizing okay, thank you. In activism and in solidarity with Palestine since the 1919, including specifically in the BDS movement, on campus and more broadly. So please welcome warmly with me, Dr. Mitchell Hartman.
How's that? Okay. Thank you, Fatima. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum. It's really such an honor to be invited here, and I'm so happy to get a chance to speak to all of you. I lost the paper where I wrote my notes today in the demonstration, so I have it on my phone, and I'm not used to reading on my phone, so if I look a bit weird, that's why. So when I got invited to come and speak here, I was told I could talk about different things that I wanted to address. And so I decided to focus on BDS, which is the short way of referring to the boycott, divestments, and sanction of Israel. And so to prepare, I started thinking about kind of what I wanted to share with you about the boycott. And I don't know how much people know about the whole movement and so on. So I have a couple of different ways that I thought I'd talk about it tonight. And the first one was I was remembering kind of when I first myself started knowing about what is a boycott when I was a kid. And so to date how old I am, I remember the boycott of South Africa. So when I was growing up as a kid, you know, you would never want to buy something in the store that came from South Africa because South Africa was apartheid and apartheid was wrong. So we didn't, in my family, buy things that came from apartheid South Africa. And I remembered other boycotts as well, right? I mean, some people also probably remember, and some people still follow it, the boycott of Nestle, right? Because of the many things that Nestle does throughout the world, and in particular in Africa. So I knew many people who also boycotted Nestle, right? And these are these kind of, Nestle is like this big corporation, and it's sort of really famous. It's a famous boycott. But I was remembering, these kind of, the big boycott of Nestle and the boycott of South Africa against apartheid. And I was also kind of thinking about, I don't know if people remember, there was a song that was quite popular at a certain time as well, that you don't play Sun City in South Africa, right? I'm not going to play Sun City. Do people remember? So yes, there's people my age here who remember that. And it's this idea that, that the musicians and singers were telling other musicians and singers, you don't go and play in South Africa, right? Because South Africa is apartheid, and you would be embarrassed to go and play in South Africa because it meant that you supported apartheid. And so I was thinking about these kind of boycotts and these bigger boycott movements to come in and sort of really focus with you a little bit tonight on the boycott of Israel. And I think that one of the reasons it's so important for us to talk about it and to think about it is because it is something that we here can do, right? It can feel hard to figure out what can we do. And boycotting is something that we can do. So I thought I would address these questions. So what are boycotts? Like, what do they do? Do boycotts work? Right? A lot of times we think like, okay, it doesn't work anyway, and I like my Nescafe 3-in-1, and, is it going to make a difference? A lot of times you hear people say, okay, a boycott, sure, it's symbolic, and it's good, it's symbolic. Okay, I don't buy these things, but then we buy it anyway because we don't think it really works. And so I wanted to talk about this idea of thinking of building up a sense of our own power as people and what kinds of things that we can do. Because boycotts are something that can be individual, right? Like I can go to Provigo and decide which things I'm going to buy. But the real power of a boycott is that the individuals come together and it gets bigger and it's collective. Right? And so I thought, just to break down a little bit, what are people asking for, and what is this whole, when people talk, oh, BDS, I support BDS, like what does it mean? And what can we, all of us, do, and how could we think about that boycott? So I wanted to say that, and a little bit what I've done and how I've supported the boycott, and maybe just to share some ideas of that for you tonight. So if people don't know, right, the way that the boycott is formulated now is as an international call, right? Our sisters and brothers in Palestine asked the world to boycott. Right? It's an international, they are a group, and they've called on people all over the world to boycott. And they have a website, and you can look it up, and you can find the rules, and you can go about it. But sometimes if we think of it like that, it can start to feel complicated, right? It's like, oh, I have to go on the website and look up the rules. And there's ways that you can start to participate without looking up all of the things. And later you can get more involved, but you can also start small. Right? So I was going to talk about just 3 parts. There's an economic boycott, like buying things, right? What you can buy and not buy. There is a cultural boycott that's like with music and movies and, all of the kind of cultural things. And there's an academic boycott, which has to do with universities and things to do with academia. So I'm going to talk about those. And just to mention, to start with, I'm really focusing tonight just talking about the boycott, but the movement also calls for 2 other pieces, which are also really important, but I just am not going to focus on them because I only have 15 minutes. So there's the boycott, there's the idea of divesting, you might have heard of divesting, and also of sanctions, which is more on a government level, like government of Quebec or government of Canada would sanction the state of Israel. Divesting is talking about kind of corporations and institution taking their money out of Israel. But I wanted to focus tonight just on the smaller piece of well, not necessarily smaller, but one that is more applicable to our own lives, which is the boycott. And so the way that the boycott was formulated in Palestine by people there is that the boycott stands for three things, right? Three simple things: freedom, equality, and justice. So when you hear people talking about the boycott and they try to make it very complicated, and, oh, how can you possibly boycott? And, you know, and like we were talking about all of these backlash and the people being fired, and we hear these sort of stories about, oh, these things are bad and they're wrong. People talk in these ways. Those are the three principles that the boycott stands for. It's really important to remember that when you're kind of defending a boycott or talking about a boycott: freedom, justice, and equality, which are hard principles to be against, right? And the boycott itself is also formulated as a peaceful means, a liberal peaceful means, based on international law. So people sometimes paint the idea, you see in the news, the BDS movement is a violent movement, it's an anti-Semitic movement, it's a bad movement. It's literally a peaceful way of exercising our individual and collective power to bring freedom, justice, and equality. So it's really important to stay focused on that. Again, in Palestine, the way that they have formulated what the demands of this movement are, they have three demands. Again, so they have three principles and they have three demands. And the three demands are the end of the occupation and colonization of Arab lands and to dismantle the apartheid wall. First demand. Second demand is the fundamental rights of all Palestinians of Israel to full equality. And the third is the right of all refugees to return. Those are the three calls of the boycott movement. Pretty basic calls. So that's what people are calling for us to do. In Palestine, they're calling on us to do this. So what is an economic boycott? And do they work? So there have been different targets over time. There have been different things that we've been asked to boycott. People might have heard of some of the famous ones. SodaStream. Do people remember SodaStream? Victoria's Secret. There are all kinds of different boycotts that have been called for over time. Right now, a lot of people are talking again about Starbucks, and they're talking about McDonald's. But there are also, so we have those things that we can boycott, but there are lots of other things that are important to think about boycotting. And I think about it every time I go in the groceries, because here in Quebec, they still stock fruit from Israel in the grocery store, right? You can find oranges that come and they're labeled from Israel in Provigo, right? You can find dates that come from here. So, you know, there are ways that you can think about participating in the economic boycott that aren't necessarily sort of big and grand. I mean, you can go, and you can ask my teenager, because I do this, you can walk into Intermarché, and you can walk into Provigo and say, why do you have these oranges? I'm not going to buy these oranges. Like, I don't think my neighbors want to buy these oranges. I think you should get different oranges. Like, I would buy my oranges from Morocco. But why are you buying oranges? Do you know the problem of bringing these oranges to this grocery store? You know, and so, you know, your teenager might be embarrassed, but, you know, they might also join in, right? Because when we start to think about this, you know, it's maybe a little bit hard to do the first time, but you can do this and you can hold the people who are bringing food to us. We should hold them accountable. Like so I maybe don't buy it. That's one step. And I tell my friend, and my friend doesn't buy it. But then maybe we go together and we tell them not to bring it. All of a sudden, we start to make a difference into what's actually in the shops, and then nobody's buying it. And then that starts to build. So this was one that I wanted to mention. We had the example, a very famous example of the sabra hummus. People maybe know about this hummus that you can buy here. Air Canada was using sabra hummus on their flights, right? So you go on a flight and you're hungry, and this is the food that they give you. And so maybe the kind of thing we can do is say, I'm sorry, I can't eat this. Like, I'm hungry, but I'm not going to eat this hummus, right? And we start through this. It's not just about not eating it or not buying it, but it's also about normalizing the conversations that we have with people, with each other, right? With our friends and our neighbors and our family, but also other people, right? Because we do live in a society with other people. So you talk to your flight attendant on Air Canada. Maybe they don't know what they're serving, and we explain to them why we don't want this hummus, why we don't want those oranges, and we change the conversation. Right? We change the conversation that's happening around us. Many people don't know, right? They might not know about the products, and they might not actually know that much about the occupation. And so it's important, I think, for us to think about those kinds of ways that we can start off small and build up our collective power. There are so many examples. I wrote down so many examples, but a friend, I was talking to my friend because it's Christmas and she's buying gifts for her family, and she was telling me she's going to go down to Indigo to buy them. And Indigo is another local company that has connections with giving donations to the IDF, right? The Heather, Heather's picks and so on that she puts on the bookshelves in this big bookstore. She, is connected with supporting the occupation. And so talking to your friends about not buying books at Indigo or chapters, right? And kind of spreading those conversations and working together to not support those companies. So I think that, people sometimes feel overwhelmed because if you look at one of those long lists of all of the businesses that support Israel in different ways, it could feel like, okay, I can't go anywhere. Right? And that's that feeling of getting demotivated and you get overwhelmed. You're like, oh my God, I can't eat McDonald's or Burger King or Starbucks or shop at Chapters and I can't buy the oranges, right? And it can feel, but you take this one step at a time, right? You take one step at a time and maybe you choose a few, right? Maybe you say, okay, me and my friends, we're going to start with Starbucks. And we're not going to go to Starbucks, we're going to go somewhere else. And we're going to support small businesses. We're going to support somebody else. And we tell each other and we tell the businesses, right? And we say, hey, I'm coming to buy my coffee from you because I don't go to Starbucks. And they say, yay. And you say, you know why I don't go to Starbucks though? I don't go to Starbucks for these reasons. And that's how we build up kind of knowledge and power, right? Because we live here. And that's something that's really important for us to do who live in Canada or Quebec or Montreal, to work for Palestine and for the sisters and brothers in Palestine who can't speak directly, right? I just want to say a short word. So this is what I was going to say about the economic boycott. And I wanted to just speak a little bit about the academic and cultural boycott too, because again, I think when you read sometimes, oh, academic boycott, cultural boycott, it sounds like really big and it's like, I'm just a person, so like I can't culturally boycott anything, right? But you can. Right? You don't have to be in a university. I work in a university, but you don't have to work in a university to do the same kind, to participate in something like an academic boycott. And you can also do similar things to what maybe universities do in their boycott where you work. So for example, I work in a professional association of professors, but I'm sure many of you, for example, work in unions, right? Or in other kinds of formations. And any of those kinds of formations, you can find ways to agree or try to convince people to agree to not have cooperation with your Israeli counterparts. You'd be surprised how many cooperations there are in Quebec. You think we don't have them, but in many cases we do. So, for example, where I work, we have passed motions in our assemblies to not have cooperation with Israeli universities, right? And just to kind of underline the point here is that this is very important, that these breaking of links to the state of Israel are not about Jews, right? It's not about saying like, oh, I'm not going to work with Jews or even Israelis. You know, there's this Israeli person and I met that person and I want to be friends with that person. This isn't about you can't be friends with this person or you can't talk to this person. It's not this, right? This is not a discriminatory campaign. This is about an institutional boycott where we say we don't cooperate with things, with corporations or institutions that fund the state of Israel, that support the state of Israel. Individual people you can work with on so many things, but these kind of links that are more institutional, we don't do them. And that's what the boycott is really about. Similar to culture, right? In cultural boycott, we boycott artists who play in Israel. We say don't, right? We can put pressure on our favorite artists, right? And I know, I'm talking to the youth now, right? You all have your, Instagrams and all of the things where you put your likes and you put your comments and so on. And artists and cultural producers today, they need you, right? They need your likes. They need the little hearts and so on. And so the ones who go to play in Israel, you send the messages, right? We aren't going to support you. We're not coming to your concert. We're not going to participate. If you go and play your music or you show your film or you do your work in Israel. So again, not individual but the kind of people who symbolically are participating in those institutions. These are campaigns that every single one of us can participate in, even if we're just sitting in our room late at night, or we can do it out in the world. But we can start to build up to a bigger and bigger goals within the smaller kind of boycott. So if you're in a union, you can pass a motion to not have ties with Israeli unions. If you have friends, family, your kids work at the you go to the university, right? So you say, oh, the academic boycott, it's just professors. It's not. It's also students. How many of you are a student, know a student, your cousin's a student, you used to be a student, right? The people who graduated from universities can pressure the universities to not have ties with Israel, right? We need everybody together to put the pressure. And I think we feel like, oh, they're so, they're like these big institutions and they won't listen to us. But if we build together, we will force them to listen to us, right? You can see, I work at McGill. And so recently there's been a lot of different kinds of things happening on campus with Palestine. So I don't know how many of you have any connection to that university, but I've seen letters that people are writing who graduated, whose kids are there. And we know that this is something that people have to pay attention to when they get lots and lots of messages. So I wanted to kind of say all of that and to say that it's not something that's without challenges. So we were talking about being afraid and trying to not be afraid. And we were talking, as the rabbi just told us, about people getting fired. Like it can be scary when you think about, oh, what's going to happen. Sometimes people don't like it. I've experienced that in my own job, when you're the one who's kind of arguing and, doing the thing that's different. But you can practice. Right? And we can practice with each other and we can slowly overcome those challenges. I won't talk about them and people can ask me about them later. It's not always easy, but when you kind of think about the fact that we're here and there's an international call that in Palestine, people worked really hard to come up with this plan, right? The people who participate in this, they came up with a plan, they designed it, they thought about it really hard, how to formulate it, and they said to us, can you do this? Right? And I feel like now for us, as the international, the people outside, it's our job to do that. And it's small, daily work that we have to start, little by little, but it can work. I believe this really deeply. So, you have that moment where you're like, okay, I'm not going to eat McDonald's. And, if I don't just do it this one time, does it change the world? It's not going to change the world. But I feel like each time we build up slowly. So I was hearing about a Starbucks that closed down in Ontario because people just aren't buying from it anymore. People don't know this, but the McGill University students got sabra hummus off the shelves. right? They pretended it was like a health issue, but they had started a huge campaign at McGill with the students going in and saying that they weren't going to buy the sabr hummus, and they put little stickers around. There are jobs that Israeli universities can't find anybody to do for them outside, because people are starting to say, no, I won't participate in universities that prop up the occupation. And so when people start kind of arguing and getting really repressive and saying, oh, the boycott's wrong and the boycott is anti-Semitic and the boycott is violent, we know that it's working. Right? Because they're cracking down on it so hard. I think it's so important because this work brings us together collectively. It makes us have those conversations, and the small steps, slowly, make us stronger. They empower us. And every time it works a little bit, we get stronger. And it's exciting. And it makes you feel like, you know what? Actually, we can do something. And so as we build and as we educate, we will then get a larger and larger community that's also building and educating. So that's where the people, all of us, have the power. So I wanted to just finish by saying, you know, we come together as individuals and as families and in communities, but you know, communities, we always talk about communities, and you're, you know, a community center here, but our communities aren't isolated, right? Talking about these things brought us all together. Right? It brought the rabbis to us. It brought me to your center. It brought the lawyer to your center. We're all here talking because we're actually part of the same community, right? We're the people who care about equality, freedom, and justice, and we're coming together to figure out what we can do about that. And I think I really understand why you can feel afraid, and I understand why you can feel really isolated, right? It's easy to feel like you're the one person like this or the one person like that, but we all belong to this community. So I see us as individuals and communities caring about these things that are coming together today, and that we have collective power, and we can build collective power so that that hamburger or the pizza or the coffee that we didn't eat actually starts to mean more and more and more. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maintenant, on va pouvoir accueillir ensemble le quatrième invité chez nous. Donc, cher et imam du Centre communautaire musulman de Montréal, sa présence fait déjà portrait d'une présentation. Veuillez accueillir avec moi cher Ali Sbeiti.
إلى أرواح الشهداء المظلومين في فلسطين ولبنان في كل مكان نهدي ثواب السورة المباركة الفاتحة مسبوقة بذكر محمد وآل محمد. In the name of Allah, the Merciful, the Compassionate, may the peace of Allah be upon all of you. Dear guests, dear brothers and sisters, the representative of different association, parties, communities, professional people, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon all of you. I was in the demonstration this afternoon, and one of the sisters approached me and asked me about the impact of these activities. Can we still do the same things without having the results that we're looking for? And these feelings, we might find it in many hearts and minds. for those who struggle in life but see themselves surrounded with many opponents from the government level to the media to even close friends, and then they might feel helpless. For all of those, I'd like to say, when you denounce the evil, it's not about getting any result or any consequences that you might achieve in your life, maybe. But it's a religious and moral obligation to purify your heart and your mind from accepting the evildoers in your life. That's why we have a famous hadith from our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, saying that من رأى منكم سلطانا جائرا ولم يغير عليه بقول أو فعل كان حقا على الله أن يدخله مدخله. If you see a corrupted governor, an oppressor, and you don't try to change the situation that we're living under this oppression by your tongue or by your deeds, you may end up in the day of judgment being with this tyrant, with this oppressor. Why? Because silence encouraged those oppressors to continue doing the wrongdoings all over. And this is exactly what our first Imam, Imam Ali, peace be upon him, says, O the believers, if you stop enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, then the evil people among you will take over. And then you will supplicate, but you will never get an answer. إذا تركتم الأمر بالمعروف والنهي عن المنكر سلط عليكم شراركم فتدعون فلا يستجاب لكم. Why there is a blockage for our prayers? Because we live to ourselves. We look after our own desires and families, and we forget about the suffering people in this world. And then you would not have your prayer answered because God wanted you to be a human being. And a human being, one of the essential condition of being a human being is to feel with those who suffer, to denounce those who made this suffering, especially for the babies, for the kids, for the women, for the elderly. What the Israeli occupation trying to do now is to get us used to see the crimes they're committing every day. When we are used to it, when the world is used to it, then they would continue their crimes with the protection of the United States and the protection of those superpowers who themselves tried for a long time in history colonizing other people and committing massacres in many different places in the world. So that's why denouncing the evil by demonstration, by boycotting, by enjoying the good by donating and helping these needy people now is the way to keep our hearts alive and our human feeling and sentiments alive. Because if we feel helpless, if we stay at our home careless, then this evil would grow and grow to the extent that every one of us might be a partners of those criminals in Palestine. So your participation is very important. I know they don't want to give you any credit, not to encourage you to continue supporting the oppressed people of Palestine. But sooner or later you will see the results. As our respected speakers and guests mentioned, in many big cities now around the world, they lost the public opinion. They invest a lot in media, but I just read before I came here that the Israelis are analyzing the great amount of people posting in the media, and it's much bigger and stronger than those who are still supporting the criminals. And this is the first time happening that those who created and supported and invested in media, they're losing their battle for the sake of the public opinion. And you are the public opinion. You are the people who can make the difference. So please don't feel the weakness. Don't feel helpless. And try your best to be heard, to be seen, and to do what are you supposed to do without waiting for the results, regardless of the results. This is a duty that you should do anyway. And it's very similar to the prayer. I have a community member who asked me yesterday. He said, I'm a sincere believer, and my fiancée left me all of a sudden before a few days of the wedding. And I keep praying that God will return her to me, but she's not returning. So does it mean that I should stop praying because she's not returning? I said, if you love her sincerely, you should keep praying, because she made you feel closer to God by doing this prayer again and again, but without any expectation, because you don't know what's God decided for you. The same thing, we do our duties in all the scenes, political scenes, community scenes, and social scenes, not because we're waiting for something to happen, but because we are a servant of God who should fulfill their duties. And by this way, we keep ourselves, our hearts and minds human. And this is why we are together here. What's common between most of us? Not the religion, not the ethnic backgrounds, not the language, not the common background that we make us come tonight here, that we are human beings concerned about the lives of those who are killed and massacred in Gaza. That means we feel about the human beings, the other human beings. And this is what Imam Ali said, that all the people are either your brothers and sisters in faith or your partners and you're similar in humanity. So wherever you look, you should find this common belief and common sense toward the others. Thank you for attending. Thank you for being here. Thank you to show the world that it's not, as our respected Rabbi said, it's not a religious war. It's not a sectarian war. It's a war between the good and the evil, between those who want to live freely and those who want to extend and to take over, and they are dreaming about what they're hearing now about the gas and the Mediterranean. So should the gas give you the permission to kill thousands and thousands? Unfortunately, this is the realistic world that we're living in. Those who don't care about human life because they want to do profits. They want to cut the gas of Russia to Europe and then be the alternative without having any mercy in their hearts, unfortunately. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you all, and inshallah we will see soon the good news of stopping this aggression and looking forward for a complete liberation of Palestine to be the country of all faithful people. The Jews, the Christian, the Muslims, and even the non-religious, they can visit. This is a historical city. Everyone is welcomed, but not under the occupation, under a Palestinian government, inshallah. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
On va pouvoir prendre une pause maintenant d'environ 10 minutes et nous continuerons notre événement avec une discussion en présence de nos invités. We will take right now a break of 10 minutes and resume our event with a discussion with our speakers. رح ناخد استراحة 10 دقايق ونرجع نكمل مع ضيوفنا في شكل حوار. Donc, j'aimerais inviter tout d'abord toutes nos invités sur la scène, ainsi que Madame Grace Batchoun de l'Organisation Canadian for Justice and Peace in the Middle East, et Monsieur Hassan Boukhadra de l'Organisation Palestinian Youth Movement. We will start now our panel discussion. I invite all of our speakers to the panel. Maître Jean Philpot, Rabbi David Feldman, Dr. Mitchell Hartman, and Sheikh Ali as well. I would also invite Grace Batchoun from the Canadian for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. Grace is the daughter of a Palestinian refugee who fled Jaffa in 1948 and got involved in the Palestinian solidarity work in 2002. She is also one of the co-founders of this organization and has raised almost $300,000 in health, agricultural, and water projects in Gaza. I also would like to welcome Hassan Boukhadra from the Palestinian Youth Movement. The Palestinian Youth Movement is a transnational, independent, grassroots movement of young Palestinians in Palestine and in exile worldwide as a result of the ongoing Zionist colonization and occupation of their homeland. The organization strives for justice and liberation for Palestine and motivates an active role as a young generation for this ultimate goal. Donc, comme je l'avais dit au tout d'abord, il y aura des micros qui vont être dispersés dans la salle. So we will invite you all of you if you have questions for our panelists. So you can, if someone has a question. اللي عنده أسئلة فيه يسألون directly للسبيكر اللي عنا. You have? Okay. Est-ce qu'il y a un micro? Quick. No. Just before. I will just have, and also if you have question like anonymous, you can send it to Instagram via the page of CCMM. Also, if you would like to ask a question, you can go on.
So the gentleman asked a great question. It's how do you stay motivated and how do you feel contributing to the movement and what keeps you going? Of course, being Palestinian, being a Canadian born and Palestinian descent, I mean the journey is different for people that have been immigrants, direct immigrants from Palestine, versus those who are born here and have to kind of grow into their identity and who have to kind of battle between their Canadian and secular influences as well as their traditional Palestinian or Muslim or Christian identity. And so I did struggle with that for most of my life, actually, and I've only become more involved with the struggle for liberation for Palestine actually 2 years ago. And it just reminds us that it sometimes takes traumatic or tragic events or huge events or conflicts. And I remember specifically the escalation in Gaza of 2021 and the mass protests that came from that as a turning point for me personally to really start looking into my history, my heritage of my people. And then from there, once you educate yourself and you understand the context, you understand the history, you understand the current situation in the West Bank, in Gaza, the injustices, the more you learn, the more motivated you become. And the more driven you are to do everything you can with the power that you have, where you are, here in the diaspora, to contribute and to work towards that ultimate goal of total liberation of Palestine.
Thank you very much. Do we have other questions? Yeah. Do we have a microphone? Yeah, we have.
Oui, ma question est pour monsieur l'avocat. Admettons que maintenant on va avoir un miracle, puis on va condamner Israël pour tout ce qu'elle fait en Palestine, sachant que tout le monde ne veut pas encore la condamner ou la juger. Mais admettons qu'ils vont dire oui, elle va être pénalisée. Quel genre de pénalisation que le droit international sanctionne pour un pays qui fait ce genre de crime, un crime de guerre? Quelles sont les conséquences? Merci.
Bon. Les peines sont surtout des peines de prison. Il n'y a pas de peine de mort. Et on peut avoir des condamnations monétaires. Mais je dois vous dire, oubliez le Cour pénal international. J'y ai travaillé comme avocat de défense. Oubliez ce cours-là, parce que si on dit, on va faire une plainte, ça c'est une question à laquelle je pense depuis 2 jours maintenant. En France, 300 avocats ont fait une plainte. De bonne foi, je suis certain. Vous ici, Michel a parlé de notre devoir de boycotter. Moi, je parle du devoir de manifester. D'autres façons de faire la... C'est une guerre politique, soit militaire, soit économique. On va vous dire, oh, non, c'est à la cour maintenant. On va attendre. Et chez cette cour-là, on attend. Quand j'étais là-bas surtout en 2011-2012, je suis allé parler avec le procureur parce que j'étais pro-palestinien. Il dit, on fait nos enquêtes. Karim Khan est allé à Rafah. OK? Puis, ce même Karim Khan a mis en accusation le président de la Russie pour les accusations absolument ridicules d'avoir nuit aux enfants. Il a sorti les enfants du zone de Donbass. OK? Alors, si c'est un tribunal qui mérite aucun respect, OK? Pour l'Afghanistan, ce tribunal a dit on ne va pas accuser les États-Unis, mais on maintient les plaintes contre les talibans. C'est pas de bon sens. Alors, donnez pas de foi à ce tribunal. C'est un tribunal impérial. L'Afrique du Sud est sortie. Moi, je connais le Burundi. Le Burundi est sorti. Ils font enquête sur les Philippines. Ils maintiennent les enquêtes sur M. Maduro pour affaiblir M. Maduro. Ils font les enquêtes sur l'armée de Nigeria qui aurait peut-être commis des exactions contre Boko Haram, les terroristes financés par le CIA. Mais ils ne font pas enquête sur qui finance les terroristes. Et les terroristes ont affaibli West Asia, j'appelle ça West Asia. Ils ont affaibli la Syrie, ils ont affaibli... Ils font la... C'est terrible. Alors, oublions, le CPI va mourir. Et le plus vite que ça meurt, dans votre pays, la Palestine, vous allez devenir souverain et vous allez résoudre les problèmes, peut-être mieux qu'ils ont fait au Chili, la forme hérétique, ok? Et peut-être vous allez faire la paix avec les sionistes et ne pas avoir, je ne sais pas, ça va être l'exercice souverain de votre peuple qui va décider comment le faire. Et beaucoup de nous, et vous, on pense que ce sera plus tôt que lointain. On ne sait pas, ok? Alors, moi, je le vois comme ça. J'y crois pas.
Yeah, just to go back to my first question that I asked earlier, right? So now you're saying that there's not much we can do later on. Now, what kind of pressure can we put on the Trudeau government? When he stands there and says, we firmly support Israel, this is not acceptable, right? What can we do besides the demonstrations?
That is politics.
Exactly.
And Justin Trudeau is a puppet. His dad had some independence I don't agree with his dad on the Quebec question, but his dad and the people who followed him in the Liberal Party before were a little bit independent with the war in Iraq. Okay? He's a puppet. What can we do? Well, jokingly, I have no idea. I mentioned that on the 7th of December, Melanie Joly is having a fundraiser. I looked at this thing, $600. No, it's too much to even go there. But what about, for example, I see some people here who have a lot of power to raise people. What if we were 4,000, we went there? 55 Rue Saint-Jacques. I'm not sure. There are ways to do it. And our Liberal MPs are terrible. They're totally isolated. Even the Bloc is a bit better, but and I'm an independentist, and I'm friendlier to the Bloc. But right now they're still following Biden, and we have to have the struggles inside. In the National Assembly, Mr. Legault raised an issue of attacking Hamas, which is it's propaganda, and QS and the PQ abstained. Now, that is the future here in Quebec. And we have to work with these people and work with them and talk to them because, again, I'm older than you are. Michel Chartrand, vous avez le pont Michel Chartrand, when you drive to Sherbrooke, he was pro-Palestinian. He would wear this in 1972. All right? The Louise Arel, the former minister, she's married to a Palestinian, but at the Parti Québécois Congress in 1981, l'OLP, PLO, was a delegate. That is the future. That is the way to do things. And I'm not talking down to you. I'm saying we have to engage with our political parties because there's a lot of potential still. That's my thinking.
No, you can't hear me. Okay. Hi, so I'm Grace Bachun. I am the co-founder of Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. I started this work over 20 years ago. And when I started this work in 22, that was when there was an Israeli incursion into Jenin. And when I saw an IDF tank going over a paraplegic man, that's what broke my heart. And I said, this cannot happen to my people. And that's when I started doing fundraisers for Gaza, for the West Bank. We did lots of fundraisers, equipped clinic, helped farmers who lost their lands and so on. But then in 2006, we said, we're Canadians, we're here. We can empty our pockets, but we have to influence the media and to influence the politicians. And that's when we founded Canadians for Justice and Peace in the Middle East. And since then, what we've been doing, we have been meeting with members of parliament. This past Friday, I was with a member of parliament. Just the day before the Bloc Québécois issued their statement on the ceasefire, we were meeting with the leader of the Bloc Québécois and his foreign affairs person. So we have been meeting with members of parliament regularly. So I really want, when you're saying, what can we do? And I'm going to give you all kinds of things that you can do. Number one, get informed. What we do with CGPME, we're known for our fact sheets. And outside, I brought tons of fact sheets. And maybe I'll ask, I brought this too, where maybe we can pass it on while I'm talking, and you could scan the code. But you could, what we did with CGPME, we created all kinds of tools to help you very quickly and very effectively impact the media and the politicians. So we have a tool where you enter your address, it looks up your MP, it makes the call to your MP. You don't even have to look up the number of your MP. It makes the call to your MPs, and it gives you the text what to say. So as we're passing these cards, you could scan it, and then you put your address, it will call the MP for you. So you call them, leave a message. Most probably you'll get their voicemail. Leave a message. Tell them you want to meet them. Go meet them. We will equip you. We have fact sheets. I brought with me lots of questions and answers on Gaza, how to answer to the media. Another thing that we have available to you, it's what we call the media responder. We invested thousands of dollars in a tool that helps us identify anything that's being said in the media, in the radio, on TV, anything about Israel-Palestine. We could see it. And then we have people on the team, on staff, who would send you an email. With the email, they tell you, here is the link to the Globe and Mail, Le Devoir, Toronto Star. They talk about Hamas killed that many, but then they say that many Palestinians died, as if a meteorite fell on them. They don't mention the word, or it's completely biased. So we tell you, here is the issue with this article. We tell you what are the issues, and then there is a link. You click on the link. Inside it, you have the emails of the journalists, be it letters to the editors or the journalists and so on, and all the information is there, and that's the media responder. So you could be a media responder. Another thing, you know, on our website, I talked about frequently asked questions, media responder. We're doing right now a campaign. It's called It's a Genocide. And maybe I could pass that so you could pass it if anyone wants to take the QR code. It's called It's a Genocide. We did a campaign for Trudeau for the ceasefire. Within 48 hours, we had over 22,000 people who wrote to Trudeau. Now we have a campaign, it's called It's a Genocide. There's blood on your hand. You know, do something to stop it. So get informed.